The courtroom fell silent. Christine Brown stood firm, her eyes blazing with years of heartache and betrayal. In her hands were documents that could shred everything Kody and Robyn had established. "Your Honor," she stated firmly, her words ringing through the silent chamber, "Kody and Robyn's self-proclaimed empire is fraud, lies, and stolen funds." The audience gasped. Sister Wives fans had witnessed family drama previously, but nothing like this. This wasn't merely jealousy, favoritism, or dissolved marriages. This was about millions of dollars, the ultimate betrayal and the sobering potential for criminal indictment. What ensued was a courtroom drama so volatile it would put an end to the Brown family name for good. To get a sense of how we arrived here, we have to look back. The Browns were America's best-known polygamous family, the stars of TLC's popular reality show Sister Wives. Initially, viewers watched in morbid curiosity. What was life like in a home with one man, 4 wives, and over a dozen children? Kody Brown soon became the family's face, a charming figure advocating unity, faith, and love. His wives, Mary, Janelle, and Christine, and then Robyn, shared their hardships and sacrifices to build a multi-million-dollar reality TV empire. Fame brought with it riches. Book contracts, speaking tours, endorsement deals, and stipends from the network soon started pouring in. The Browns weren't merely struggling anymore, they were thriving. Well, at least that was what it seemed like on TV. In private, something entirely different was occurring. When Robyn became part of the family, the dynamics shifted. Initially, she appeared to be a new beginning, a younger, energetic wife who brought life into the show. Christine and the others soon picked up on how Kody treated her differently from the rest. Suddenly, financial matters weren't shared openly with all the wives. Instead, Kody demanded that he and Robyn were to handle the family's finances for the greater good. Initially, the wives trusted him. After all, Kody had always taught them about guarding the family's future. But Christine realized soon enough that deals, contracts, and purchases of property were being signed behind the other wives' backs. It was the start of a gigantic shift in power, one that saw Christine, Janelle, and Mary more and more relegated to the background. As Kody and Robyn quietly constructed their own kingdom. Christine quote, "Harris' turning point came when she discovered property deeds in Arizona. $1 million parcel of land had been bought in the family name, or so she had believed. When she investigated further, she discovered the documents named only Kody and Robyn as owners. But here's the surprise. The funds used to buy that property were from the collective TLC earnings of the family. That is, Christine, Janelle, and Mary had unwittingly financed Kody and Robyn's ultimate dream house. Christine started digging further. What she discovered was stunning. Hidden bank accounts, offshore transactions, and more than $3.5 million into only Kody and Robyn's controlled businesses. Their emails to each other showed a chilling scheme. "Once this is all arranged," Kody typed, "we won't need them anymore. It'll just be us." For Christine, that was the ultimate betrayal. The man who had said he held his family in honor had been quietly eliminating them from the equation all along. When Christine did arrive at court, she wasn't merely standing up for herself. She was standing up for every wife and child who had been used, discarded, and betrayed. Her attorney brought a mountain of evidence. Bank records documenting millions transferred to secret accounts. Deeds to property cutting out the other wives. Faked signatures on contracts that Kody and Robyn said the wives had signed off on. Emails and text messages establishing intent to exclude and disinherit Christine, Mary, and Janelle. The face of the judge hardened as he paged through the papers. "Mr. Brown," he intoned, "these are severe claims. Do you have a response?" Kody shifted around. He blamed the network, the accountants, even Christine herself, claiming she was out for revenge. But the evidence was irrefutable. Robyn, normally subdued and weeping, became hysterical, assuring the court that Christine was lying. But even her sobbing couldn't sweep away the mountain of evidence facing the court. By the final day of the session, the judge made a shocking announcement: they had sufficient evidence to initiate a formal inquiry into fraud and financial impropriety on the part of Kody and Robyn. The Browns' multi-million-dollar dynasty, once founded in faith and family, now hung in the balance of being ruined. Christine leaned back, her expression a blend of relief and fatigue. For years she had lived in secret, smiling for the cameras as she smiled, aware of what was really going on behind the scenes. Now the truth had finally been revealed. The reaction was instant. Fans erupted online, with tags labeling Kody and Robyn as frauds. Some rallied behind Kody, saying Christine was overplaying it. But most rallied behind Christine, hailing her bravery for finally speaking out. The other two wives, Mary and Janelle, were wary but supportive, with rumors circulating that they too might step forward with evidence of their own. The more that detectives probe, the more at risk everything becomes for the Browns. Their houses, their income, even their spot on TV. If they are charged, both Kody and Robyn would face severe penalties, ranging from fines to potential time behind bars. For Christine, however, it was never about money. It was about honesty. It was about proving to the world that in back of the well-crafted facade of love and harmony, there was an intricate web of deceit for the two individuals involved. The question now is, can the family ever heal? Can trust ever be restored? Or is this really the demise of the Brown Empire? Christine's bombshell testimony has left viewers reeling, the family broken, and the future unknown. But what's your take? Is this the justice Christine has been waiting for all these years? Or is Kody correct when he says he's the victim of a scorned ex-wife's vendetta? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this story is far from over. And don't forget to subscribe, because the next chapter in this courtroom drama could change everything we thought we knew about the sister wives' family. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the benches, cameras were banned inside, but that didn't stop journalists from scribbling notes furiously, desperate to capture every word. The air was heavy with anticipation, almost suffocating, as if everyone knew something extraordinary was about to happen. Then suddenly, the room fell silent. Christine Brown stood up. Her hands shook just a little as she held a thick folder full of papers. Decades of suffering, infidelity, and secrets were contained in that folder, and in a mere few minutes, she was going to expose them to the public. She breathed in deeply, her gaze fixed on the judge, and with a voice that was firm, powerful, and unwavering, she uttered the words that would forever define the Brown family legacy. Your Honor, the truth must be heard. Kody and Robyn constructed their dynasty on deceptions, manipulation, and fraud. The words sliced through the courtroom like a knife. The gallery gasped. Some leaned forward, eyes wide with shock. Others shook their heads in disbelief. Even the judge had stopped, looking up from his papers, suddenly much more aware. This was not the sort of accusation thrown around during a family dispute. This was a direct allegation of fraud, something that implied legal repercussions, financial loss, and potentially prison. Christine didn't blink. She knew the value of her words, but she also knew that silence had cost her enough already. For a moment, no one stirred. Kody sat at the defense table, arms tightly crossed over his chest, jaw clenching and unclenching, as if he were fighting to keep himself from bursting. Next to him, Robyn rubbed her eyes with a tissue, her face scrunched up in fear and disbelief. The clerk in the courtroom shifted uncomfortably, obviously taken aback by the explosion Christine had just delivered. The only noise was the scratching of reporters' pens, recording every word. Then the judge leaned forward. Mrs. Brown, he said evenly but firmly, this is a serious charge. Please take care. What evidence do you have to make such an accusation? Christine didn't flinch. She moved forward, heels clicking against the shiny floor, and placed the thick folder in front of the judge. Her attorney pushed it forward, opening it to display a pile of bank statements, titles to property, and printouts of emails. The judge pushed his glasses up onto his nose and started riffing through the papers. With every page he turned, his face became grimmer. For years Christine had remained silent, smiling for the sister wives' cameras while pretending all was well while her life fell apart in the shadows. She had given up her time, her energy, and her love for a man who had promised family harmony, but delivered deceit. Now, here in this courtroom, she was finished pretending. Your Honor, Christine went on, her words shaking with tears, but growing stronger. For more than a decade, Kody has deceived not just me, but my whole family. He and Robyn pretended to be loyal partners, but really they've been putting family money into hidden accounts, creating an empire for themselves while leaving the rest of us struggling behind them. Another ripple of gasps went through the courtroom. Christine stood her ground and faced Kody. For years she had lived in fear of standing up to him, of questioning the man who required her to obey and be loyal. But here, in this room of strangers and reporters, she stared him down for the first time with no fear. "You lied to us," she spat, her voice shaking but firm. "You lied to me, you lied to our children, you founded it on lies." Christine's words weren't declarations. They were decades of pent-up anguish bursting forth in the open. The crowd sensed it. This wasn't about money. This was about broken promises, discrimination, and betrayal so profound it had wounded her soul. She relayed the times when she wondered where the money was being spent, only to be reassured that she was paranoid. She remembered late-night fights when Kody brushed aside her worries, explaining everything was for the family's future. And she admitted the shame of seeing Robyn get treated to privileges and luxuries while the rest of the wives and children were plagued with financial instability. Her voice trembled as she described the children. They trusted him. They believed in him. But now I have to look them in the eyes and tell them that their father loved money and power more than he ever loved us. By the time she was done, not a single dry eye remained in the courtroom. Even some reporters were visibly disturbed. Kody couldn't remain quiet anymore. He slammed his hand onto the table, startling even his own attorney. "This is rubbish," he bellowed. "Christine is bitter, angry, and seeking revenge because she couldn't cope with the life she signed up for. She's distorting everything." The judge held up a hand. "Mr. Brown, please." But Kody was not done. His face red as a poppy. He gestured at Christine. "She's lying. I built this family. I gave everything for them. And now she wants to ruin me because she's jealous of Robyn." His words hung thick in the room. Some shook their heads, not impressed. Others murmured to each other, unsure who to believe. But Christine did not falter. She stood firm, staring at him, her quiet more powerful than his tantrum. By Kody's side, Robyn broke down crying. She wrapped her arms around his, shaking her head as if she couldn't understand what she was witnessing. "Christine, how could you do this?" Robyn wailed, her voice breaking. "We're family. You know that's not true. You're distorting everything. You're splitting us up." But Christine didn't react to Robyn. She'd heard those tears before, seen them used as a shield to deflect and distract. Not today. Today, Christine had proof, hard evidence that tears couldn't remove. After some minutes of anxiety, the judge finally spoke. His tone was serene, paced, but in no way uncertain. "These charges are not to be taken lightly. On the basis of the initial evidence presented, this court will permit these documents to be entered into record. Complete review and investigation will be needed to confirm or deny these allegations." The room exploded once more. Some gasped, others whispered hysterically, and reporters came close to leaping out of their chairs. This was no longer an internal family conflict. This was now an open matter of public record, with the potential to evolve into a full-fledged criminal case. Christine closed her eyes, a tear rolling down her cheek. For the first time in years, she felt the weight of it lifting. She had told the truth, and the world was finally hearing her. Then the session recessed for the day, and people poured out of the courtroom buzzing with shock. Reporters scrambled to get the word out. "Christine Brown claims Kody and Robyn are multi-million-dollar scammers." Christine stepped out slowly, with her lawyer beside her. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. But there was a silent strength to her stride. This was just the beginning. But it was a beginning she had waited her whole life for. Kody flung out minutes later, and would not answer questions, his fury emanating from him like a heat. Robyn grasped him, still sobbing, as they elbowed through the throng of reporters yelling for answers. The Brown dynasty, the model polygamous family America believed it understood, was now crumbling in front of our very eyes. And driving the attack was Christine, the silenced wife turned voice of fury. That was the first punch. The court had merely heard the beginning of Christine's argument, but already the weaknesses in the empire were revealed. The proof was incriminating, the charges explosive, and the consequences unavoidable. What had begun as rumors of favoritism had now become charges of fraud, deception, and betrayal in tens of millions of dollars. And the world watched. Christine's explosive courtroom testimony makes sense only if we turn back the clock to the start, when the Brown family was not a scandal, but a symbol. when they were feted as pioneers of reality TV, and their empire appeared unassailable. To the world, the Browns were not merely a polygamous family, but a brand, a movement, a television sensation. It began. In 2010, TLC debuted Sister Wives, and overnight it seemed, the Browns were household names. People watched with interest. What did day-to-day life in a house, with one husband, 4 wives, and over a dozen children look like? At face value, the show seemed innocuous reality television. But to Kody Brown, it was something more. It was a chance for a lifetime. Cameras translated into dollars, and dollars translated into expansion. Expansion translated into power. The show wasn't solely about putting family life on display. It was about creating an empire. Book contracts, interviews, merchandise, speaking fees. It all came pouring in. The Browns transitioned from living paycheck to paycheck to having luxuries they never knew existed before. New houses, cars, holidays, and more. Now the family that used to fight to pay bills was sitting on the potential of millions. But here's where the situation began shifting. In the beginning, decisions were meant to be made as a team. There was a voice for each wife, and money was supposed to be shared in a 50-50 split. But the more money it accumulated, the more control Kody asserted. He started demanding to know that he was the only one who could deal with finances properly. Didn't he run the household? Didn't he preside over the family? Initially, the wives acquiesced. They trusted him. They trusted his assurances that each dime was being put back into investments for their benefit. But what the cameras did not capture was how fast the dynamics changed. Kody began behaving less like a husband and more like a CEO. All deals, all dollars, all properties, suddenly everything ran through him. And standing directly next to him, Robyn. Robyn. Quote, S introduction to the family changed everything. The viewers assumed it was just another wife among the bunch. But what was happening behind closed doors was the beginning of a takeover. Kody's favoritism was clear, on camera and off. He hung out with Robyn more than anyone else. He stood up for her all the time. And most notably, he started pouring more and more money into her and her kids. Christine, Janelle, and Mary couldn't help but notice that as they were tightening their belts, Robyn always had what she required. And a little extra. The spin? Kody insisted Robyn required additional support because she was new to the family. But eventually, it was apparent Robyn wasn't merely an additional wife. She was becoming Kody's business partner in creating a whole new empire. With success came possibility. The Browns started businesses, published books, and made appearances. Their brand wasn't merely polygamy anymore. It was entrepreneurship. But this was no family partnership. It was a funnel. Money came in from various sources, but Kody and Robyn increasingly stood as the ones who managed it. Book deals. When the family wrote and published their combined memoir, earnings were to be divided equally. But Christine would later say that royalties went straight into accounts owned by Kody and Robyn. Online business. Robyn started My Sister Wife's Closet, an online jewelry and apparel business. On paper, it was a family business. In practice, a majority of the money came from collective family revenue, and the profits remained in Robyn's hands. Property investments. The Browns purchased property and houses in Utah, Nevada, and Arizona. Each time, Kody and Robyn's names were in the forefront, while the other wives' participation was obscured or downplayed. Initially, Christine and the others believed that these investments would be for the benefit of all. But with time, it was obvious Kody wasn't constructing a family empire. He was constructing a Kody and Robyn empire. Sister Wives fans began to catch on too. Viewers on social media pointed out how Kody treated Robyn with softness while ignoring or belittling the other wives. In the background, it was felt more by the wives. Christine, in fact, started feeling invisible. Her input suppressed, her sacrifice overlooked. She had dedicated her whole life to the family, to find herself being left behind. The finances simply widened the gap. Robyn was living well, yet Christine was barely able to make ends meet for her children. If she questioned finances, Kody would wave her off, telling her, "Don't worry, it's being taken care of." But Christine couldn't ignore the sinking feeling in her gut. Something wasn't right. The tipping point came with the infamous Coyote Pass property in Arizona. It was supposed to be a fresh start for the family, a massive piece of land where each wife could eventually build her own home. Kody sold the dream perfectly. This is for all of us. This is where we'll grow old together. The family put in together, investing millions of their TLC profits. Christine, Janelle, and Mary thought they were investing in their future. But when Christine went through the documents later, she understood the ugly reality. The land was not divided equally. Some properties were put under Kody and Robyn's names alone. Others left out the wives altogether. The unity dream had been just that, a dream. The Coyote Pass transaction wasn't about family. It was about Kody and Robyn gaining assets for themselves. It was then that Christine's eyes opened completely. She witnessed the favoritism, the deception, the manipulation. She witnessed how Kody manipulated faith and leadership as control tools. And she witnessed how money, millions of dollars, was gradually drifting out of the grasp of the rest of the family. The Christine who had previously kept quiet, who had previously endured Kody's excuses, was no longer there. She began to ask tougher questions. She began to record what she discovered. It wasn't about equity anymore. It was about survival. On TV, the Browns still smiled. They still sat down together for dinner. They still spoke to viewers of love, sacrifice, and togetherness. But out of sight of the cameras, the cracks were widening. Christine did know what was true. The family business was a house of cards. A misstep, a shove, and it would collapse. And that's precisely what transpired in court years later, when Christine finally pulled back the curtain. The Brown dynasty was built on fantasy. To the public, they were a plural marriage exemplar, a reality TV success story. But to insiders, it was a story of control, greed, and betrayal. What started as a vision of unity had evolved into a dynasty of deceit, topped by Kody and Robyn, and everybody else shoved to the bottom. And when Christine entered court, she bore not only her grief, but the whole burden of a shattered empire that had deceived the world for more than a decade. Every tale has an instant where it all flips. For Christine Brown, it was not an argument, not a shouting battle, but one piece of paper. It was night. Christine sat in her Flagstaff kitchen, the house silent, children asleep. She had a pile of bills on the table, and as so many times before, she was attempting to balance the figures. The family had always existed on tight finances, but tonight something was different. Then she noticed it. Sandwiched in the stack of papers. A property deed. It looked ordinary at first. Another layer of the intricate jigsaw puzzle that was the Browns' finances. But when Christine read the names on the document, her heart skipped a beat. The deed named only Kody Brown and Robyn Brown as owners. Not Christine. Not Janelle. Not Mary. Kody and Robyn. And yet, the funds for this house hadn't only been provided by Kody and Robyn. They'd been taken from the family pot, a treasure chest stacked with years of collective income from sister wives, book contracts, and public appearances. Christine had put money into it. So had the other wives. So had the kids, in indirect ways, by simply living their lives on camera. And now, here was evidence that the sacrifices of the many were being converted into personal profit for just two. Christine quote. Hands shook as she clutched the paper. It was more than a deed. It was betrayal on paper. Her mind flashed back to all the times she'd questioned Kody where the money was going. He always pushed her aside. Don't worry, Christine. It's being taken care of. It's for the future of the family. And here was the reality. The future of the family actually referred to the future of Kody and Robyn. Christine remembered her children, the birthdays she had cut back on, the bills she had juggled, the nights she'd sobbed herself into sleep, wondering if her sacrifices had meant anything. And now, Christy saw, with a tearing pain, that the sacrifices had all been for nothing. The next day, Christine approached Kody. She clutched the deed in her hand, trembling with fury and grief. Kody, she commanded. What is this? Why are yours and Robyn's names alone on this property? We all paid for this. We all made sacrifices for this. How could you do this to us? Kody's face grew hard. He was accustomed to being questioned, but not so. Not with evidence. You don't get it, Christine, he spat. This is for all of us. I just had to sign it in my name, and Robyn's for legal purposes. It's tactics. You have to believe me. But Christine wasn't convinced anymore. Not this time. Tactics? She retorted. Or was this your scheme all along, to eliminate the rest of us and leave everything to you and Robyn? The debate raged, voices raised, the walls vibrating with years of rage. The other wives heard. Some attempted to intervene. Others remained silent, well aware that Christine was only speaking that which they had all suspected for years. For Christine, it was the breaking point. That moment, she knew no family to save. Only Kody and Robyn's kingdom, and the rest were expendable. But the betrayal went further than the deed. When Christine started investigating further, with her attorney's assistance, she discovered something even more sinister: forged signatures. Certain contracts tied to the Browns' businesses and properties appeared to have her name, Janelle's name, even Mary's, but when Christine studied them closely, she realized the signatures didn't match. They weren't hers. They weren't the others', her lawyer confirmed it. The contracts had been falsified. Someone had signed on their behalf, without their knowledge or consent. It was one thing to be omitted from documents. It was another to be signed in fraudulently, employed as guise for transactions into which they had never entered. Christine was ill. This was not merely betrayal, this was theft. It was manipulation of the highest order. And it was a crime. Maybe the most agonizing aspect of Christine's revelation was not the money, or the properties, or even the fake documents. It was what it all signified for the children. The Browns had instructed their children all along that all that they were working for was for them, for their financial security, their education, their stability. But the reality was, while Christine's children lived in doubt, Kody and Robyn's kids lived in comfort. They got the better houses, the better resources, the added support. Christine understood that Kody hadn't only betrayed his wives. He had betrayed his children, prioritizing some over others, establishing a legacy for a few, and leaving the rest behind. That realization shattered Christine's heart in a way nothing else could. And it made her more determined. One evening, following another vicious fight, Christine remembered Kody grumbling something to himself that tormented her. This is the plan, Christine. Once we have everything arranged, we won't need them anymore. It'll just be us. She didn't know she had misheard him at the time, or that he hadn't meant what he said. But now, after all she had learned, she knew that these words were true. Kody and Robyn hadn't been playing favorites. As Christine had suspected, they'd been scheming for years to remove everyone else from the equation. Christine's breaking point wasn't a moment. It was an avalanche of betrayals descending at once. The deed in Kody's and Robyn's name, only the fake signatures on contracts. The missing millions in family accounts. The children they left behind. The hushed plan to cut everyone else out. Christine knew she had two options: remain silent and let the deceit continue, or stand and risk losing everything to speak the truth. And in that instance, Christine made her decision. Christine was aware that she could not battle this fight at home. Kody would disavow it. Robyn would sob. The other wives would hang back, fearing to rock the boat. No, this was not family drama anymore. This was legal. This was fraud. And the only source to reveal it was in court. So she collected every paper she could. She sat down with her attorney and compiled the bank transfer puzzle, the deeds, the contracts. She steeled herself emotionally for the firestorm that was about to descend. And when the day finally came, she entered that courtroom head held high, shouldering not only her own betrayal, but the betrayal of every wife and child Kody had manipulated. It was the breaking point that turned into a turning point. Christine's breaking point wasn't merely about property or finances. It was about years of being lied to, finally colliding with reality. It was about the discovery that the man she trusted with her life had been constructing a future without her in it. And it was about deciding to fight back, regardless of the price tag. The turning point was the moment Christine changed, from the reserved, underappreciated wife to the woman who would topple the entire Brown empire. The courtroom was hushed, but the air was oppressive. Each seat was occupied. Lawyers, journalists, curious bystanders, and even members of the Brown clan who were brave enough to witness what was going to happen. Christine entered steadily, her chin up, her gaze unwavering. To the world outside, she seemed serene. But in her heart, it thudded like a drum of war. This was not a case of money or possessions. This was a case of truth. This was a case of revealing the deception that had broken her family, and at the defense table sat Kody and Robyn, side by side. Kody sported his habitual attitude of defiance. His arms folded, jaw clenched. Robyn, on the other hand, already had her well-rehearsed look of innocence in her eyes, tears welling, ready to fall. But even they could not halt what was unfolding. When Christine testified, the courtroom leaned in. Her attorney started with easy questions. Her name, her background, her position in the family, but it didn't take much time before the actual bombshells were dropped. Mrs. Brown, the attorney inquired, can you inform the court at what point you learned that Mr. Brown and Mrs. Robyn Brown's financial activities were not as you were led to understand? Christine took a deep breath, then replied, her voice firm but with a hint of brokenness. I knew when I saw a deed, one that named only Kody and Robyn as the owners of a piece of property. A piece of property bought with money from the family account. Money earned by all of us. Gasps made their way through the room. Even the judge raised an eyebrow. Christine went on, her words measured. We were told everything we did, the show, the appearances, the sacrifices, was for our family's future. But it wasn't. It was for their future. For Kody and Robyn, everyone else was left with nothing. At this point, Christine's lawyer started to introduce evidence. Thick packets of bank records, deeds to property, and contracts were spread out before the judge. Exhibit A, the attorney declared. A deed signed solely by Kody and Robyn Brown, paid for with communal family funds. Exhibit B, a set of contracts with the names of Christine Brown, Janelle Brown, and Mary Brown, but under scrutiny, the signatures were revealed to be forgery. The courtroom gasped once more. Forgery was no longer an intra-family quarrel. It was criminal fraud. Christine stabbed her finger at the documents. That is not my signature. I never signed that contract. And yet my name was used to make it seem like I agreed. The judge leaned forward. The seriousness of the situation was not something that could be denied. Unable to keep himself in check, Kody burst out. This is absurd, he bellowed, pounding his fist on the table. She's twisting everything. This is a family issue, not some courtroom drama. The gavel came down hard. Mr. Brown, you will be quiet, except when addressed. But Kody couldn't keep still. His face was flushed with anger, his words ringing out in the courtroom. She's doing this to ruin me. She's jealous, bitter. She's trying to destroy everything I've worked for. Christine didn't blink. Instead, she stared him straight in the eye. I'm not trying to ruin you, Kody. You ruined this family all on your own. The room fell silent once more. That one sentence cut deeper than any piece of evidence. Then it was Robyn's turn. Her attorney attempted to portray her as a victim, a woman who had been caught in the middle of an acrimonious breakup. Robyn sniffled, her tears dropping as she said, I never asked for this. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I thought all of the things that we were doing were for the best of the family. If there were mistakes made, I didn't know. But Christine wasn't deceived. Neither was the judge. Christine stooped over the microphone and said, Robyn, you signed those deeds. You attended those meetings. You knew precisely what you were doing. Don't pretend to be so naive when you were gaining the most. Robyn's tears immediately dried. Her facade slipped for an instant, and the court glimpsed the steel behind the sobs. As the financial records from Christine's attorney were read in, the enormity of the betrayal became irrefutable. Millions of dollars had been transferred from the family coffers into businesses owned solely by Kody and Robyn. Vacant property, luxury cars, secret investments beneath shell companies all led back to them. It wasn't preferential treatment, it was a methodical draining of family funds. Christine's attorney put it bluntly. This was not mismanagement. This was fraud. Calculated, deliberate fraud intended to deprive the other wives and children of their fair share. The judge nodded sternly. Then came what may have been the most poignant testimony of all, the words of the children. Christine's attorney read from the statements of some of her children, who described growing up observing their mother scrape by, observing their own needs marginalized, while Kody and Robyn were comfortable. "My mother slaved away to provide for us a nice life," one of the children's statements said, "but we always knew that Dad loved Robyn's children more. Now I know why. He was creating a future for them, and not for us." The courtroom grew quiet once again. Even veteran journalists dabbed their eyes. Then, after hours of hearing testimony, the judge broke his silence. "Mr. and Mrs. Brown," he said sternly, referring to Kody and Robyn, "the proof presented before this court today indicates grave legal impropriety, forgery, theft of funds, deceit. These are not family issues. These are offenses, and this court will not ignore them." Kody's face turned white. Robyn gripped his hand, tears welling again. Christine, however, sat up straighter, her determination radiating through. But just when it looked like the day couldn't get any more incendiary, Christine's attorney dropped one last bomb of evidence. A secret recording. On it, Kody's voice was heard mentioning, "Once we have everything set up, we won't need them anymore. It'll just be us." The recording played over and over, the words ringing through the courtroom. It was the smoking gun, the evidence that this was not an accident, a misunderstanding. It was the plan all along. Kody leaned back in his chair, unable to refute what everyone had just heard. Gasps, whispers, even yells broke out in the courtroom. Journalists scrambled to jot down their notes. Family members shared shocked glances. The judge struck the gavel once more. Order, order in the court. But all the banging in the world would not stifle the truth that had been let loose. Kody and Robyn had been revealed. As the day concluded, Christine spoke to the court again. Her voice was firm, her tone cutting. "I stood with Kody for years. I believed him. I trusted him with everything. But he used that trust to deceive me, to deceive all of us. This wasn't just a marriage that ended, it was a family that he destroyed with lies and greed. Today, I'm here not just for myself, but for every child, every wife, every person who was hurt by this. The truth matters. And today, the truth has been set free." The courtroom burst into applause. Not the norm in a court of law, but here it was uncontainable. Everyone knew they had just seen history. The courtroom bombshell wasn't about any documents or records, financial or otherwise. It was about revealing the lies that had gone hiding in plain sight for decades. Christine had stood alone, but firm, and ripped off the mask from Kody and Robyn's empire. And now things could never be the same again. The courtroom bombshell had shattered the myth, and the world would never regard the Brown family in the same light again. The courtroom bombshell had exploded, and there was no way to conceal the blast. Christine's testimony, the doctored documents, the vanished millions, and the incriminating audio recording had dispelled the myth of togetherness Kody and Robyn had so meticulously developed. But as dramatic as the courthouse confrontation had been, the aftermath was even worse. What followed was not merely an ongoing legal battle, but the complete unraveling of the Brown family dynasty. The judge did not make a decision that day. These cases, as complicated as they are, take time to resolve, but the premonitions from the bench were sufficient to set the stage. Kody and Robyn were in very real danger of serious indictments: fraud, forgery, misappropriation of funds. As Christine exited the courthouse, reporters descended on her. Flashbulbs went off. Microphones pushed into her face. "Christine, how are you feeling?" one yelled out. "Will Kody end up in jail?" another asked. "Are you prepared for the backlash from the fans?" Christine hesitated, faced the cameras and spoke only one word: "I did what I had to do." The truth speaks for itself. It was straightforward, but effective, and it went viral. On the opposite end of things, Kody and Robyn emerged from the courthouse amidst a tempest of boos. Former fans who used to be enamored with their story now booed, waving signs that said, "Justice for Christine and fraud family exposed." Kody growled at the reporters, "This is all lies. She's trying to destroy me." But the louder he shouted, the crazier he looked. Robyn held onto his arm, crying into her sleeve. But the crocodile tears no longer cut any ice. The public had glimpsed behind the mask, and sympathy she once enjoyed was lost. Hours later, Every form of entertainment in America and many around the world were carrying the story. Christine uncovers Brown family empire. As fake, yelled one. Kody and Robyn indicted over multi-million-dollar scam, bellowed another. Talk shows argued the scandal. Lawyers analyzed the evidence. Supporters filled social media with hashtags such as #Justice for Christine, #Fraud Family, and #Brown Empire Falls. Even late-night talkers got in on it, mocking Kody's hubris and Robyn's constant tears. The erstwhile proud patriarch was now a punchline. Behind the headlines, however, the fallout within the family was even more vicious. Janelle, who had fought hard for money while Kody preferred Robyn, was furious. "You stole from all of us," she said to Kody in a private argument. "All those years you made me be patient, say it was for the family, and the whole time you were sending it all to her." Mary also could no longer remain quiet. Even though she had frequently been pushed aside, she knew she too had been a victim of doctored signatures and broken vows. "I devoted decades to this family, and you erased me, just like that." For her, the children, previously reluctant to defy their father, now spoke openly of their pain. Posts on social media, interviews, even offhand remarks, drew a portrait of betrayal, extending far beyond a financial loss. For the first time, Kody was absolutely alone. The producers of Sister Wives, meanwhile, were in crisis. The show had done well on conflict, but this was more than television drama. It was a criminal scandal. Executives convened crisis meetings. Would they be able to keep airing the Brown saga when their patriarch was being investigated by the federal government? Would sponsors withdraw? It was decided quickly. The network made the announcement that all future productions with Kody and Robyn were cancelled indefinitely. They turned the limelight elsewhere though. Christine was offered her own special, a tell-all documentary revealing the truth, allowing her to present her version unfiltered. Viewers were elated. Ratings exploded. The empire Kody and Robyn had sought to corner was taken away from them and awarded to Christine, the woman they believed they silenced. Weeks passed, and the hammer finally dropped. Federal prosecutors issued formal charges: wire fraud for wiring money using secret accounts, forgery for forged signatures on contracts, conspiracy to cheat the other family members out of millions. The indictment papers sounded like a thriller, describing how Kody and Robyn had systematically siphoned family income into shell corporations, property and personal investments, all in the name of protecting the family. Now that same scheme was going to kill them. If Kody believed he could ride out the scandal as a victim, he was mistaken. The public had already made up their minds. Former fans torched Sister Wives DVDs on TikTok. Appearances by Kody and Robyn at events were cancelled. Companies associated with their names went under overnight. Wherever they went, they were greeted with scorn or outrage. Robyn's tears, previously interpreted as weakness, were now derided as manipulation. Kody's bluster, previously emulated by some, was now interpreted as arrogance and cruelty. Their empire wasn't crumbling. It was being destroyed to its core. For Christine, it was cathartic. Free from Kody's domination, she thrived. Her exploitative tell-all documentary shattered streaming records. Adoring fans showered her with encouragement, writing her letters, sending her gifts, and messages of appreciation for standing up for what was right. Companies courted her for endorsements, recognizing her as a beacon of courage and empowerment. But above fame or riches, Christine prized the tranquility that she was able to achieve at last. She no longer needed to wonder where the money went. She no longer needed to plead for respect. She no longer needed to struggle to be heard. Her children prospered as well, free from the specter of their father's favoritism. For the first time, they were safe in knowing their mother had stood up for them and prevailed. In contrast, Kody and Robyn were experiencing the worst days of their lives. Kody's hubris had lost him everything: his wives, his children's respect, his public reputation, and now his freedom. As the trial got closer, the threat of jail became more and more real each day. Robyn, his former right-hand woman, started to crack under the strain. Rumors circulated that she might betray Kody in order to preserve her own skin. Prosecutors whispered promises of bargains, discounts for cooperation. The former golden couple now shared the same destiny as the family they had deceived. Destruction and fragmentation. Maybe the most emblematic scene occurred when the family's huge Coyote Pass property, formerly pitched as the crown jewel of their dynasty, was confiscated during the probe. The land, symbolizing unity and heritage, was now a desolate monument to greed and deceit. Bulldozers came to the site, not to construct the dream homes Kody had promised, but to prepare the land for sale. It was the last nail in the coffin of the Brown Empire. Months later, after the dust had dissipated and the indictments had rolled into full trials, Christine granted one final interview. When asked whether she was vindicated, she smiled gently and replied, "It was never about revenge. It was about truth." Kody and Robyn believed that they could write the rest of us out. But they forgot one thing. Lies always surface. And when they do, the empire constructed on them falls. Those words rang out on television sets and social media accounts, making her the voice of justice in a story that had originally been about polygamy, but had become one of fraud, deception, and survival. The aftermath was total. The Brown family dynasty, once established through love, togetherness, and the vow of forever, was shattered. Kody and Robyn were tried for crimes and shamed publicly. The children, once marginalized, now stood tall. And Christine, once underestimated and overlooked wife, emerged as heroine who rescued the truth. The empire wasn't destroyed. It was deconstructed brick by brick, lie by lie, until nothing but the truth remained. And ultimately, it was Christine's bravery, not Kody's domination, that framed the legacy of the Brown family. The courtroom fight might have been over. The empire might have fallen, but the tale of the Browns did not just disappear when the judge's gavel came crashing down. If anything, the downfall of Kody and Robyn's empire signaled the start of a new chapter. A chapter of shattered trust, shifting loyalties, and surprise twists nobody could have possibly anticipated. Because betrayal doesn't result in a verdict alone. Betrayal leaves marks. And those marks became the enduring legacy of the Brown family drama. Because after Christine's victory, the two other wives, Janelle and Mary, were left to piece themselves together. Janelle, always the practical one, tried to move forward. She focused on rebuilding her finances, reconnecting with her children, and supporting Christine. But the betrayal weighed on her. She had trusted Kody for decades, and the realization that she had been nothing more than a pawn in his plan shook her deeply. Mary fought even harder. For years, she'd been put on the sidelines, ignored, treated like an afterthought. Now, with the fraud revealed, she realized she hadn't just been emotionally discarded, she had been financially wiped out. In a moment of devastating honesty, Mary told Christine, "Do you know what hurts the most? It's not that he loved her more. It's that he never thought I mattered enough to even steal from fairly. I was just invisible." The break between Kody and the wives was irreparable. There was no turning back. But curiously, it drew Christine, Janelle, and Mary closer. Betrayal had created a new alliance among the survivors. The blowback wasn't just among the wives. The Brown kids, more than a dozen of them, from several mothers, had to deal with the ugly reality. Some, particularly Christine's and Janelle's children, sided with their mothers. They openly criticized Kody's favoritism and revealed how they had felt neglected. Others, though, stood by Kody and Robyn. Through love, fear, or denial, they defended their father, saying the allegations were exaggerated or made up. This left a sorrowful division, sibling against sibling, families divided down the middle. Thanksgiving dinner turned into battlegrounds. Phone calls were made into shouting arguments. Social media was clogged with cryptic tweets and bitter subtweets. For the kids, the collapse of the empire wasn't about money. It was about identity. Who were they if they weren't a part of the sister wives' family anymore? And could they ever really forgive the father who had let them down? As the legal vice tightened, Kody became more desperate. In interviews, he doubled down, insisting Christine was a liar, a manipulator, a woman scorned. He accused Janelle and Mary of scheming against him, positioning himself as the victim of great betrayal. But the public wasn't swallowing it. His tirades went viral, not as defenses, but as memes. His hot-headed diatribes became evidence of his unraveling. Behind closed doors, Kody became paranoid. He broke with longtime friends. He accused lawyers of turning against him. He even snapped at Robyn, the one remaining person from his life, yelling that she hadn't cried hard enough in court, that she hadn't defended him passionately enough. The man who had once professed to head a family of one was now a king without a kingdom, spewing venom at phantoms. And then came the shock no one could anticipate. While prosecutors were readying their case, word went around that Robyn was in plea talks. To avoid jail, she was ready to turn on Kody. Christine's attorney suggested it in a media briefing. "We believe Mrs. Robyn Brown is cooperating with authorities to ensure the full truth comes to light." The news stunned Kody like a blow from a dagger. The very woman he had given up everything for, the very woman he had chosen over all others, was now willing to sacrifice him to the wolves to salvage her own hide. Behind closed doors, sources claimed the fights between Kody and Robyn were explosive. Kody allegedly shouted, "You were supposed to be my partner, my ride or die, and now you're stabbing me in the back." But Robyn, ever the survivor, simply replied, "I have to protect my kids. You're on your own now." While Kody and Robyn spiraled, Christine's star continued to rise. Her tell-all film had broken records. Networks wooed her for additional projects, speaking engagements, book proposals, even a potential spin-off show about life after the Browns. But Christine didn't simply become famous. She became iconic. Women everywhere regarded her as a symbol of strength. A woman who had escaped oppression and come out on top. Social media was saturated with hashtags such as #BeLikeChristine and #TruthWins. For the first time in her life, Christine wasn't living in Kody's shadow. She was shining in her own light. But even Christine knew the wounds would never completely heal. The betrayal wasn't financial only. It was emotional, spiritual, generational. The Browns had once been the face of unconventional love, of family against all odds. Now they were a warning of greed, of favoritism, of deception. The name of the family, once in celebration, was now linked to scandal. All future Browns would have that burden. The empire had fallen, but the shame remained. And for Christine, even though she had won, there was still sorrow. Sorrow for the family that could have been. Sorrow for the trust that could never be regained. Sorrow for the children who would never witness their parents together. Months later, prior to the trial actually commencing, Christine and Kody met one final time. It wasn't in a courtroom. It wasn't on TV. It was in the parking lot of an attorney's office. Kody, haggard and empty-eyed, came to her. His voice was softer now, devoid of the bombast that once characterized him. "Christine," he asked, "was it worth it, ruining everything, making me the bad guy?" Christine regarded him, her eyes not full of anger, but of insight. "I didn't ruin it, Kody. You did. You destroyed it when you prioritized greed over family, deception over honesty, and Robyn over us all. All I did was expose the world to what you actually are." And with that, she turned and left. It was the final blow. The last chapter of their history as husband and wife, as enemies and allies. The Brown dynasty was over. The properties confiscated. The show ended. The fortune wasted. But out of its ruins arose a new legacy. One of survival, of telling the truth, of resilience. Christine became the embodiment of that legacy. Yanel enjoyed peace with independence. Mary, damaged though she was, started forging her own identity. Kody and Robyn were lost from view, remembered not as the innovators of an unorthodox family, but as the authors of their own ruin. And the children, splintered as they were, would take the truth with them, forever marked by the lessons of betrayal and survival. The tale didn't conclude in the courtroom. It didn't conclude in indictments or headlines. The Browns' story continued in the decisions they made after the empire collapsed. Kody and Robyn opted for desperation, deceit and betrayal. Christine opted for truth, resilience and liberty. And ultimately, the legacy of treachery became the legacy of redemption, for the bold enough to confront it. The empire had crumbled, the betrayals had been revealed, and the family was in tatters. But there was one last chapter to be written, the criminal trial of Kody and Robyn Brown. It wasn't all about the money. It wasn't all about shattered marriages or broken families. It was about the law, about justice, about whether Kody and Robyn, the self-styled leaders of a family empire would face the ultimate penalty for their wrongdoing. And as the trial opened, the whole world tuned in, eager for the verdict. From its first day, the courthouse resembled less a place of law and more a media carnival. Reporters filled the steps. Supporters of Christine and Janelle paraded posters that read "Truth wins" and "Justice for the wives." Within, the air was charged. The prosecutors, who had mountains of evidence at their disposal, sat in assurance. Across from them, Kody and Robyn appeared gaunt, their previously polished looks now marred by exhaustion and tension. Kody, hanging on to his brashness, came in a dark suit and his characteristic wild hair, but the pride in his eyes had faded. Robyn, dressed formally, attempted to play the devoted wife and innocent mother part. Everyone knew the charade wouldn't last long. The prosecution took no time at all to paint Kody and Robyn as masterminds of a multi-million-dollar fraud. They described how the couple had directed funds from family accounts into hidden shell companies. They showed bank statements detailing mysterious transfers, cash withdrawals, and high-end purchases that did not correspond with their declared incomes. The most surprising revelation followed. Records demonstrating Kody and Robyn forging signatures of the other wives to access funds in joint property. Gasps erupted in the courtroom when Christine's name was on one of the fakes. Christine herself testified, her voice calm but chalked with emotion. "Kody didn't betray me as a husband," she said. "He betrayed me as a partner, as a mother, as someone who trusted him to have the future of my family. He stole from all of us." Her evidence came out of left field. The jury leaned forward, transfixed. The public outside applauded. Christine was now the prosecution's strongest weapon. Robyn, quote, "Seth's lawyers attempted to portray her as a victim, saying she was just following her husband's orders, that she didn't know the ins and outs of the money." But the prosecution had proof. In the form of receipts, emails emerged where Robyn was arranging wire payments. Text messages indicated that she was bullying accountants into making the numbers fit. The final blow was delivered when prosecutors presented a secretly taped phone call. On it, there was no mistaking Robyn's voice. "Iseth to move the money now, before Christine finds out. If she gets her hands on this, it's all over." In the courtroom fell silent. Robyn's face turned white. Her defense plan had imploded in 2 seconds. Then came the moment everyone was dreading. Kody himself took the stand. From the beginning, his testimony was a debacle. He rambled, dodged, and blamed everyone else for conspiring against him. He referred to Christine as a traitor, Janelle as bitter, and Mary as irrelevant. He asserted that the whole case was a witch hunt driven by jealousy. At one point, he even yelled at the prosecutor, "You don't know. I constructed this family. I got us famous. They all took advantage of me, and now they want to kill me." The judge had to bang the gavel several times to bring the court back to order. But the harm was done. Kody had unveiled his true nature, not a misguided patriarch, but an ego-addled man of fury. With evidence mounting and Kody's testimony collapsing, the defense team attempted one final Hail Mary, blaming the wives. They claimed that Christine, Janelle, and Mary had all profited from the cash while the empire boomed and now were merely turning on Kody out of bitterness. But the jury wasn't convinced. Christine's dignified calm testifying directly contradicted Kody's raging tantrums. The wives presented themselves as victims betrayed and stolen from, not accomplices. The more they were targeted by the defense, the more sympathetic they grew. Weeks of testimony passed, and the case was finally delivered to the jury. The world waited. News channels displayed countdown clocks. Social media was filled with hashtags. #Kody on trial, #Robyn exposed, #justice. For Christine, within the courthouse, Christine sat with Mary and Janelle at her side. For once, the 3 women who had been enemies stood together. Down the aisle, Kody sat apart, scowling at the jury box. Robyn had her arm around his, speaking frantically, but even she seemed to know the verdict was imminent. Within 3 days, the jury had returned. The foreman rose to deliver the verdicts individually. On the count of conspiracy to commit fraud, guilty. On the count of wire fraud, guilty. On the count of forgery, guilty. On the count of money laundering, guilty. Each word stung like a hammer blow. Kody and Robyn were both guilty on all significant charges. Christine closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek, not of sadness, but of relief. The courtroom erupted in gasps and whispers. Outside, cheers rang out from Christine's supporters. Kody meanwhile slammed his fists on the table, shouting, "This is rigged. This is corruption. You'll all regret this." The judge had him escorted out of the courtroom. It was the last in a series of humiliations. Weeks later, the sentencing hearing attracted as much interest as the trial. Prosecutors sought the maximum sentence, claiming that Kody and Robyn's crimes were premeditated, calculated, and catastrophic. Kody's attorneys pleaded for mercy, describing him as a man who was lost sight but could be rehabilitated. Robyn's attorneys argued she should not be given severe punishment for the sake of her children. As the judge finally spoke, the courtroom was silent. "Kody Brown, you held yourself out as the head of a family founded on faith and trust. You betrayed that trust and used it to perpetrate calculated, egregious crimes. For your part, this court sentences you to 25 years in federal prison." There were gasps. Kody's jaw fell. "You can't do that. I'm the head of this family. I built this," he bellowed. But it was too late. His words carried no weight. Next was Robyn's. "Robyn Brown, though your role was not as large as your husband's, the facts reveal you were not merely a bystander. You actively engaged in fraud and concealment. This court commits you to 15 years of federal prison." Robyn wept hysterically, pleading for mercy, but the judge was not moved. The guilty verdict shook the nation. News sites broke headlines such as "Sister Wives Scandal. Kody Brown sentenced to 25 years. Robyn falls from grace. The Queen becomes a convict. Christine Brown triumphs in courtroom showdown." Christine became a national heroine. She was booked on television talk shows. Book sales went through the roof, and her experience was an anthem of justice for women everywhere. It was bittersweet for Janelle and Mary, too. They had lost years of their lives to Kody's manipulation, but at least now the truth was out. And for the kids, though still hurting, there was closure. Their father had lied to them. The cycle of deceit was broken at last. On the day Kody was shipped off to federal prison, cameras recorded his final words to journalists. "They'll regret this. All of them. Christine thinks she's won, but this isn't over. Not by a long shot." But as the prison gates swung shut behind him, it was evident the saga of Kody Brown as the head of a family dynasty was over. Christine, outside the courthouse with her supporters, made one last statement. This was never about revenge. This was about truth. And today, truth finally won. The trial and sentencing brought the end of the Brown Empire. Kody and Robyn's fall was complete. Their empire in ruins, their names forever sullied. But for Christine, Janelle, Mary, and their children, it was the beginning of a new legacy, one not founded on lies, but on truth. The empire had perished, but out of its remains, freedom was ultimately born. The courtroom theatrics were over. The verdict had been handed down. Kody and Robyn Brown were taken away in handcuffs, their kingdom destroyed. But the narrative didn't end there, because after the scandal dust settled, the question was, what came next? This is the story of life after the trial of redemption, healing, and the shadows that never fully go away. For Christine, the trial was more than a win. It was a rebirth. No longer burdened by Kody's shadow, she embraced her new freedom with open arms. Book deals, documentaries, and speaking tours flowed in. She made the talk shows, recounting her life from silenced wife to triumphant whistleblower. But Christine's biggest victory wasn't stardom, it was peace. She settled into a new house with her kids, surrounded by love and laughter rather than secrets and manipulation. She began a foundation to aid women fleeing economic abuse, speaking out for those who had previously felt silenced. Viewers didn't see her as a reality television star any longer. They saw her as a survivor, a fighter, and icon of strength. As Christine herself summed up in one interview, "I didn't just leave Kody. I left behind the lies, the fear, and the silence. And I'll never go back." Janelle, that steady rock, went another way. The trial provided her with closure, yet with questions as well. For years, she had structured her life with a man who had utilized her as a money machine. Now she was set to rebuild, in her own way. She started a small business specializing in health and wellness, and she found success quickly. Her children surrounded her, happy to see their mother thriving once again. For Janelle, freedom wasn't about headlines or fame. It was about stability, about waking up without fear of manipulation, about proving to herself and her kids that life could be steady, honest, and good. Her quiet strength inspired countless women who had followed her journey for years. Mary, Stott's story was perhaps the most bittersweet. She had suffered decades of neglect, emotional abandonment, and deception. The trial for fraud only verified her deepest fears, that she had never truly been important to Kody whatsoever. Instead of shattering her, it fueled her transformation. Mary poured her time into her inn business, converting it into a successful retreat center for women wanting to heal. She publicly opened up about her hurt, her errors, and her rediscovery of self-value. In a single eloquent speech, she proclaimed, "For years I begged someone else to see my value. Now, I finally see it myself, and that's all that matters." Her remarks went viral, motivating women all over the globe to leave abusive relationships. The Brown children bore the greatest burden of all. For others, the decision was a relief. They no longer had to fake that their father was a hero. They could finally tell their truth. Many provided interviews, describing neglect and favoritism, thanking Christine for her bravery. Others, however, were left with only confusion and sorrow. They still loved their father, after everything. Seeing him walk away in handcuffs was a grief they could not shake. The siblings, having been split, gradually started to see eye to eye. Thanksgiving meals were now times of mending. Certain wounds would never heal completely, but there was change. Above all, the children promised one thing: they would never continue the cycle. They would create families based on honesty, equality, and respect, not control and dishonesty. And then, there was Kody, once the self-styled patriarch of a great family empire, now an inmate number in a federal prison. Initially, Kody struggled with reality. He ranted to anyone who would listen, claiming he had been framed, that Christine had played the system. But eventually his listeners disappeared. Inside prison walls, no one wanted to hear his alibis. Without his hair dye, designer jackets, and cameras, Kody was another man in jail. Accounts from sources close to Kody described a grim scene. Kody could not cope, fought with the other prisoners, and spent long days in his cell, reliving his downfall. The man who insisted on blind loyalty had no followers left. Robyn's story was different. She attempted to play the victim behind bars, saying she had been manipulated by Kody. Some of the inmates felt sympathy for her. Others didn't believe it. Her biggest heartache was being kept away from her children. Despite writing them letters and making calls, the separation was not bearable. The woman who held onto Kody as her knight in shining armor now had to deal with being labeled his co-conspirator. She spent her days quietly, with head bowed, hoping one day she would be able to see freedom once more. But even then, she knew the world outside would never take her back the same way. Even years following the verdict, the world continued to be intrigued by the Brown saga. Documentaries, podcasts, and exposés picked apart every aspect. Christine's book was a bestseller memoir. Janelle and Mary were asked to speak as keynote speakers to Women's Convention. The once quiet wives were now strong voices for reform. Kody and Robyn, in the meantime, were cautionary tales, their failure the subject of study in business school and family therapy session. What started as a reality television novelty had turned into a national morality play, about greed, betrayal, and the cost of deception. On the 10th anniversary of the verdict, Christine gave a viral interview. Seated in her sunny garden, flanked by her children and grandchildren, she looked back. "Everyone asks me if I regret revealing Kody. My reply is easy: no, because telling the truth is not betraying anyone. Betrayal is what you do when someone trusts you, and you end it all up in the toilet. All I did was expose the truth, and the truth freed us." Her testimony echoed far beyond the Sister Wives fan base. It became a battle cry for survivors worldwide. And so, the Browns' legacy was revealed. Kody and Robyn's names would be forever synonymous with fraud and deception. Their dynasty, once constructed on the bedrock of promises of faith and solidarity, was destroyed. But Christine, Janelle, and Mary bore a different legacy. One of strength, of perseverance, of rebirth. The kids grew up stronger, determined to build healthier lives. The cycle was broken. The empire had been toppled, but out of its ruins emerged something much more powerful: freedom, truth, and hope. The trial ended the Browns' dynasty, but the real story was what followed. Christine discovered her voice. Janelle constructed her peace. Mary found her worth again. The children healed, and the world was inspired. And as for Kody and Robyn, they were their own architects of destruction, remembered not for the kingdom they built, but for the deception that destroyed it. And at the end of it all, that is the real legacy of the Brown family drama: a warning, a lesson, and a tale of survival against all odds.